Welcome back to CRC's Garage, and we are finally back and working on the neon. For the last couple of months, it was a busy season of my work, so I wasn't able to do as many videos as I'd like. And I've been saving money trying to collect parts to work on the car to get it ready for the 2026 autocross season. So let me go over what parts I got, what we'll be doing, and what I have been doing to the neon since the last episode I shot. So let's get to it. So let's start with the interior here. Pulled out the dash to get to the heater box. It turned out I did have a coolant leak in the heater box, or in the heater core. And the whole dash assembly has to come out to get the heater core out. So as I was doing that, I found that on the firewall and the cowl here, the factory insulation, which is this foam-backed rubber stuff, has disintegrated. I mean, the car's spent pretty much its entire life in Arizona, and the Arizona heat isn't really good for these rubber products, but yeah, so that's the result of that. This stuff's disintegrated. It pretty much was all but useless for sound deadening. So what I'm gonna do, I cleaned it all out. I weighed the bucket with it empty and weighed it with it full with all this shit in there, and it was 12 pounds of sound deadener. So what I want to do with the firewall here is we're going to coat the firewall and the cowl same place that the rubber was with lizard skin, and I'll re-weigh the buckets to see if we're saving any weight. But I think the lizard skin is going to be a little bit lighter. How much, we'll figure that out later when we do that. But that's the plan for here. I have to replace the heater core, and then we could start reassembling the interior here. But yeah, since I was in it this far, I figured I might as well take it apart, clean it up, because I mean, this stuff has really disintegrated. So that's pretty much where we're at with the interior. I think the interior is pretty much going to go back the same way that it was. The only thing I might change is we'll get a racing seat if I have the money for it by the time the season starts. I was finding that holding myself in the factory seat was difficult, so it'd be something, so a seat with some bolstering on the sides to help hold me in place would be a lot nicer to have in here. We'll get that in eventually one way or another, but whether or not it'll be in for the first event of the season, we'll find out. So let's move around to the outside here. Something was going bad inside the transmission. I think it was a bearing. So I decided I want to put headers on the car and an exhaust system and coilovers. So I figured it was easier to drop pretty much the entire subframe and everything out of the car, because most of this was coming out anyways. So I figured this was the easiest way. It wasn't that difficult. We lifted the body, dropped the car down so the engine and transmission were sitting on some dollies, and then lifted the body up with these straps and a engine hoist up over the car enough to roll the engine and transmission out from under the car. So for out here, I'd like to do something with the motor, but I just don't think I have the time and the money to do it yet. But for now, we'll definitely be rebuilding the transmission and doing the header and exhaust system and the coilovers. And then I think everything else will pretty much be going back. And we're just going to do some maintenance stuff, like the master cylinder here for the clutch. It's wet on the inside, so the master cylinder is starting to go bad. So we'll replace that. And just basic maintenance stuff in here, other than putting everything back in. Once I removed the bumper cover off, I was able to see how some of this things were made and how they were installed. This is a resonator for the intake. So here you can see this is the tube that would actually connect to the factory airbox. And then it came up, and then that's where the actual intake is. That's where it's sucking in the air in. So all this is just a baffle, basically, to help reduce noise of the intake. So we'll probably get rid of that, because I mean, it's up front all the way, and we'll see how much that weighs. And then the same thing on the other side. This is where the windshield washer bottle is. That's the access in the firewall or through the fender there, or wheel well. We'll probably, this is in front of the front tire, so it hangs out pretty far in front of the car. So we'll take this off. I mean, this weighs a couple pounds when it's completely full of liquid. We'll take this off and relocate it to the trunk. I don't think you'll have any problems with the nozzles spraying water on the windshield from that distance. I mean, my Jeep had a nozzle all the way in the back windshield, and it was able to squirt fluid in there. So, and that's probably longer distance than what this is, and it worked just fine. So we'll relocate that, get rid of some weight off the front of the car. I think that's pretty much it for those modifications. Let me show you the coilover and suspension stuff that I got that we'll be doing in this video. So these are the BC Racing coilover springs that we'll be putting on the car. Rear one's already in the trunk. I got it ready to go on. So that, and the rear sway bar here, it's adjustable. It's got 3 different positions that you can play with the stiffness of the rear bar, and then a polyurethane bushing kit for the suspension. So that's what we'll be working on in this video, is the coilovers for the rear sway bar, and any of the rear. I have to go through the kit and see what bushings are for the rear, because I think most of them are for the front. But we'll be installing those on the car in this video. So the only thing I really had to do was to remove the caliper and hang it up out of the way there, so I could get to the bolts that go from the strut through the knuckle there. Pop those 2 bolts out, and then all I have to do is take those 3 bolts off the top of the strut there, and then that should pull out, and we're ready to install the new one. So they're relatively easy, and the front shouldn't go any worse because I have 90% of it ripped apart already. So yep, let's finish getting the rear strut installed in, and the rear should be done then. So the one thing I wanted to see is if the new coilovers were lighter than the factory spring setup. Let's see what I backs on my scale here. So factory strut assembly comes in at what, 17 pounds 10 ounces. The new one if it'll stay. The new one comes in 13 pounds 6 ounces. So a little bit over 4 pounds lighter, so that's cool. So 8 pounds in the rear, and if the fronts are the same, they're 8 pounds up front. So that'll be nice. Couple pounds of weight savings there. So the new coil over is in. Went in there quite nicely. Got the brakes back on, and everything's torqued to spec. So now I have the polyurethane bushings for here and for here. So I can replace the bushings on both the ends of this control arm. I forget what it's called exactly, but I can replace those next. And for these links, I don't have polyurethane bushings for those, and the replacement, you can't get replacement bushings, so I'm gonna have to replace the entire thing. I think I'm gonna, I don't know, I haven't decided yet. I might replace them, I might not. I have to replace the whole arm if I do. So I haven't decided yet, but that's the next step. So coilovers are in. Next step will be replace the bushings on this rod, and then I'll go over and do the same thing to the other side, and then we'll put the rear sway bar in. So it wasn't too difficult to get the rubber bushing out. Just follow along in the directions, but I ended up using a razor blade to cut the flange off the bushing, and then I was able to clamp it in a vise and just pry up on the arm to pull it out. And then I cut as much rubber off of the insert here as I could, but I ended up just burning it off and then running it through using a wire brush on it to finish cleaning off the rest of the rubber, and then I painted them. So they went pretty straightforward. They weren't too bad. It was pretty straightforward. But so now we're gonna install it back in the car with the polyurethane bushings, and then this side's done, and we just need to move on to the passenger side. See if you can see that. So I greased up this side of that bushing, put the washer on the rod, the tension rod, then slid the bushing on, made sure that that raised part was sitting in the hole correctly as I slid the rod in. So that was sitting there, and I swung the rod up and bolted it in place there. Yeah, you can see it. So bolted that place in, torqued that to spec. Now I'm going to do the same thing, grease this side of the bushing, slide it on, put the washer on, and then torque that to spec. And then this side's done. So here's the rear passenger side tension strut that we haven't done yet. The passenger side. So what we're gonna do is this rubber, to replace the rubber with polyurethane, we're gonna cut this lip off with the utility knife, and then we're going to clamp it in a vise and just use the tension strut as a pry bar to pull the retainer out of the middle here. And then the instructions say to radius this other side to make that easier to press it in, and then we'll press it together as an assembly with the new polyurethane bushing. So now that that rubber flange is cut off, just went around it with the razor blade, cut it off, nothing special. And now we're just going to got it clamped in a vise, we're just going to use the strut rod as a pry bar and work it off. And that's it. That's separated. So now all we got to do is cut the old rubber off that retainer, and I'll use the razor blade, cut off as much of it as I can, and then I'll actually burn it off, the rest of it off, because it is bonded pretty good to the metal, and then I'll just run it through a wire brush and clean up the rest of the rubber, and then I'll sandblast everything, paint it, and that's ready for assembly. So I got all the old rubber cleaned out. And what I'm going to do now is press the bushing, or the new polyurethane bushing, in. And I found that using the press here, I found that you can't push it straight in. It tries to shear this lip off. So you got to kind of roll it in using the press. Once you start it, it'll start going. But yeah, you just got to take your time and to push it in, but it'll work out. But press this into here, and then the other piece, this piece, you'll press into the middle then, and then it's ready to go in the car. Use a little polyurethane grease, hopefully keep them from squeaking, and everything's slid together pretty good. It helps to have a buddy operate the press while you're trying to hold everything together to get the bushing in. But other than that, once that's in, this one goes in pretty easy, no problems, and now it's ready to go on the car. Alright, so let me get you caught up on finishing the rear suspension here. I backed out the strut here to adjust the ride height pretty much as far all the way. There has to be at least 80 millimeters of thread engagement in here. I think I'm around 100 millimeters right now. So I figured if I back it out all the way, when we go to drop it back on the ground to adjust the actual ride height, we know we're at the highest point that it could go, and we're just going to lower the car from there until we get to the desired ride height. So that was my thinking there. The springs are supposed to have 2 millimeters of compression from the people who make them. I'll double check that before we do any ride height adjustment. And then the last thing we need to do to finish up the rear suspension here is I bought the lateral links here. I wasn't able just to find the bushings, so I had to buy the complete assembly. So what I'm gonna do is, there's an adjuster back here. I'm gonna mark this with a Sharpie, just for a reference, so we put the car back together. The car's gonna have to get aligned no matter what, but at least it should be somewhat close, because we are lowering the car 1 inch. We'll have to get, and we're replacing so many suspension components. We're gonna have to take the car and get it aligned anyways, so not that it really matters that much, but it should be somewhat in the ballpark if we make a mark and put it back there when we put the new links on. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, the sway bar, I'm not going to worry about that yet, hooking that up. Once we get the ride height adjusted and where we want it, then we'll come back and put the links in, and because those are adjustable as well, and we'll get those to where we want it after the ride height set to where we want it. So yep, so I'm gonna pull these out now, replace them with new ones, and then the rear suspension's done, and we're gonna move on to the front. So here's one of the arms I just pulled off. You can see I just pulled off that chunk of rubber. So the bushings were worn out. I mean, they're the original ones, so yeah, they're time. That's the new ones. So yep, let's get these back in the car. All right, so the new lateral arms are on, but before I can tighten the bolts, the weight of the vehicle needs to be on the suspension. So when we go to adjust the ride height, I'll have to go back through everything and make sure everything's torqued to spec. But yeah, the weight, you'll tear the bushing if you tighten it sitting on the in full droop like this with no weight on the suspension. So we need to get the tire back on, drop it back in the ground, and then I'm able to tighten those bolts to torque spec. So that's pretty much it for now. Just got to do the other side, and then the rear is pretty much done. All right, so we're gonna finish this video off with the interior. So we're way behind. We'll be lucky. I probably bit off way more than I could chew for the amount of money I have to work on the car. But anyways, we're just gonna finish building it the way I want, since it's all apart, and when we get to go racing again, we get to go racing again. But anyways, what took so long is the weather to cooperate. The lizard skin is a water-based product, and I forget what the minimum temperature was, 50 degrees or something like that. It couldn't get lower than a certain temperature for like a 24-hour period. So I had to wait for the weather to warm up enough during the night that it wouldn't cool down below whatever that minimum was. So, but it's finally done. I mean, the first race of the season has already come and gone, but I got the firewall's all coated with the lizard skin, the sound deadener, and the insulation one, and it's a lot better than what it was with that factory stuff that was disintegrating. So, and I did the truck at the same time. If I was going to mix up the stuff, I wanted to do everything once and just be done. We did the back of the cab on the truck. That's in another video I have working on. But we sprayed the back of the cab, behind the seat there, and the firewall here, and then some of the floor panels. They already had this heavy tar sound deadener on the floor, and I wasn't peeling it off, so we just sprayed around it. It's not worth spraying the lizard skin on top of it, but we just sprayed the exposed sheet metal around that. So this is all done. We probably saved, it was hard to say because like I said, I did the truck at the same time, but we probably saved about 2 pounds off the factory sound deadener, maybe a little bit more, 3 pounds. But we did save weight, so that's what's important. It's better to remove weight than to add it, so we're moving in the right direction with that stuff. So it is lighter. So yeah, the next step is, like I said, I have to rebuild that or replace the heater core inside the factory heater box, and we could put that back in, and then we could put the dash back up and start reassembling the interior here. So that's the next step. I'll end the video with the heater box back installed, and then the next video for the car, we'll install the front suspension, the coilovers, and stuff like that. So yeah, let me rebuild the heater core. Hopefully it's not too difficult. I don't think it will be. And get that installed, and then that'll be it for this video. So what I found here, the Neon uses vacuum to switch between air recirculation inside the cabin and sucking in fresh air from outside for the what do you call it? The climate control inside the car. There's this one port that comes through the firewall here. So this would have been up against the firewall. This side's in the engine compartment. And this port, the rubber disintegrated. So the car wasn't getting any vacuum to operate this cylinder. So it wasn't switching between air coming into the car or recirculation. So, and the plastic broke that connects to that arm there. So you can see the arms flapping here, or the doors flapping, and the arm's not moving much. So I gotta figure out a replacement for that, or some way to fix it. Probably not gonna be able to fix it because it is plastic there, and it's just a thin little piece that broke off. So I'm going to end up having to find another heater box, because I'm sure I'm not going to be able to find pieces for a heater box. So much for ending the video with this being installed in the car. We're pretty much going to just end it there today, and hopefully next episode I'll have this into the car. So we'll see. But next episode we'll be working on the front suspension and other things up front here. And then maybe we'll install that heater box. But that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.